Hi, my name is Aaron Teckenberg, and I say I'm from Grundy Center, Iowa. Though I've lived in different places throughout my life, like Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, Iowa City, Ames, etc., throughout Iowa, I mostly say I'm from Grundy Center, as that I was there for my elementary life and middle school life. My linguistic journey is shaped by the people around me, family, friends, teachers, and even strangers who have commented on the way I speak. Growing up, I primarily spoke English at home. I learned other language growing up, but none of them ever stuck. For example, I learned some French in high school and some ASL in college. If anyone knows anything about Grundy Center, Iowa, is that this town has no diversity at all. 90% of my school was white, and no other race was above 2%. English was all that I knew, and it was the primary language that I worked so hard to perfect. I've also now recognized that there is no such thing as an accent, but some are more culturally accepted than others, which are deemed as not having an accent. Growing up in Iowa, when everyone in my community talks the same, I figured I had no accent. A reading that challenged and educated my understanding of what an accent is was Lippy Green's Chapter 3, The Myth of Non-Accent. This chapter challenges the idea that some people speak without an accent. The main argument is that everyone has an accent, but certain ways of speaking, especially standardized American English, other known as SAE, are privileged and perceived as neutral or unaccented, while others are stigmatized, similar to what I experienced growing up, as I thought my voice was deemed as neutral. A couple quotes that Lippy Green makes that go with their main argument on page 46 is states, if two varieties of a single language also differ in morphological structures, syntax, lexicon, and semantics, then they are different varieties or dialects of the same language, as well as stating afterwards, if two varieties of a common mother language differ in all these ways, and in addition have distinct literary histories, distinct orographies, or and slash or political boundaries, then they are generally called different languages. This was from Lippy Green's text, The Myth of Non-Accent, on page 46. Going after that, my personal experiences connect well with these ideas. Growing up in Granny Center, Iowa, I felt the belief that I had no accent because my speech matched the dominant standard in my community in Granny Center. However, as I've recognized everyone speaks with an accent, it's just that some accents are more socially accepted than others. This aligns with Lippy Green's argument that the perception of an accent is more about social power than linguistic differences. In school, Standardized American English, SAE, was emphasized as the correct way to speak and write. I remember moments when teachers corrected my speech, making me conscious of my grammar and pronunciation. One particular instance stands out. When I pronounce the words, I don't say the full words. I cheat. For example, I pronounce the word library as library. My teacher responded, it's actually pronounced library, with both syllables clearly enunciated. It made me hyper aware of how I sounded and influenced the way I presented myself in different spaces, making sure I pronounce words fully around people who are higher above me. When I talk about people who are higher above me, this can be situations such as my bosses, my teachers, or even uh, people above me, like teachers, professors, or bosses. At home, language was more fluid. My mom had strong opinions about my grammar and would always correct me when I said things like me and my friend went to the mall. My mom would say, actually, it should be my friend and I went to the mall. She would hammer down for me to remember when referring to yourself and someone else, put the other person first. I didn't realize it at the time, but this constant correction shaped how I viewed language. There was proper English, and then there was the way of what came naturally to me. This example happened at least once a week, just for me, but I would hear my mom say this to my siblings multiple times. Despite the emphasis on standardized American English in school, I've never been particularly praised for my fluency in spoken English. However, my writing has often been complimented. I noticed that while teachers cared about how I spoke, they cared even more about how I wrote. It reinforced the idea that language is not just about communication, but also about perception and credibility. I believe this comes with writing papers. When writing papers, I talk as formally as possible. While I write as formally as possible is nowhere near the way I talk to my friends or even family. When I do talk to my friends, it's more informal, even my family. Especially when I text, I would use phrases such as WYD or LOL. Those stand for what you doing or laugh out loud. Terms I would never use in my papers, but it's just the way that I speak that has become much more of the norm compared to later generations. When I say later generations, my parents often are starting to get attached to those terms. But when I think of my grandparents, they will spell out the full term, such as "What are you doing?" instead of what I would text as WYD. Or even when I am texting my grandparents, sometimes I will say the full sentence because I know if I were to say WYD, usually they wouldn't get it and just send a question mark. After further research, I have discovered how academic language has transformed throughout the years through teaching. Guy writes in his academic language, or excuse me, Guy writes in his article, What is Academic Language? Students acquire new styles of language by hearing them used in appropriate contexts and by using themselves in such contexts. It also seems increasingly clear that students acquire academic style of language when they engage in overt discussion about how language works to organize and represent meaning in scientific disciplines. This was from Guy. This quote explains to me just like when I was in high school, my academic language is always improving through hearing them used in appropriate contexts and by using themselves in such contexts. With my development in academic language, it will shape my future career by reinforcing the importance of adaptability and communication. Whether in academic, professional, or informal settings, I recognize that language is fluid and context dependent. As I continue my career, I will strive to foster an inclusive linguistic environment that values diverse forms of expression while upholding the standards necessary for professional credibility. In the future, I plan to be an elementary teacher. I've already found ways of doing this when I'm in my practicums, such as using different languages when greeting the parents. I would use different uh, welcome welcome emails of different languages such as English, Swahili, and Spanish so everyone could understand me. These are just short but examples that I've used for the future. Looking back, I realize how much my linguistic history influences the way I think about language today. I understand that language is fluid, shaped by culture, geography, and identity. I also recognize the biases tied to language, how certain dialects or accents are deemed less educated, while others are praised. This awareness has made me more conscious of the way that I judge language use in others and more accepting of linguistic diversity. As I continue to develop my language skills, I find myself embracing the different influences that have shaped my speech, whether it's the remnants of childhood language, the dialect of my community, or the formal structure of standardized American English. Each part of my linguistic history tells a story of where I've been and where I will be going.